ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to be here this evening among you at the India Today Conclave and to introduce the United States Secretary of State, Colin Powell. There is no better place to exchange ideas and discuss the topic of India and the 21st century than here among many of India's and the world's finest minds. The theme of this year's conclave, India Tomorrow, Building an Indian Century, reflects the growing international recognition of India's key role in the world and its potential for the future. Is this vision justified? Is it realistic? The U.S. view would be affirmative on both counts and is already reflected in U.S. policy. Early in his administration, President Bush identified the U.S.-India relationship as having key strategic importance, and the President's joint statement with Prime Minister Vajpayee in November 2001 enshrining this reality has been followed by what can only be described as an historic change in relations between the United States and India. This ongoing transformation has a multiplicity of themes, which are already visible, but its roots lie in our common values and interests as democratic societies committed to political freedom, tolerance, and representative government, and of course also the fight against terrorism. The 21st century looks very bright for India. Some might say shining. Prospects for sustained growth are good. India has a very large young population, which will be driving force in India's rise. India has the world's largest middle class, growing at an impressive pace, and showing all the signs of restless ambition and increasing confidence on many fronts. It is exciting to be here with you at this time, sharing with you the building of this new relationship between two great democratic powers. However, without taking the fun out of this evening, I would point out that A, 100 years is a very long period of time. B, there are more than enough challenges just to keep both of our countries engaged for the next 20 years. And C, greatness is achieved in the cauldron of human action, where challenges are daunting, failure a constant distraction, and triumph a difficult thing to make permanent. When two nations envisage a major strategic alliance in today's shrinking world of market-driven economies, that relationship must incorporate far more than strong bilateral government-to-government initiatives. Among democracies, it is people who must engage. People in large and small-scale organizations and institutions. People in great corporations, universities, health centers, hospitals, financial markets, cultural pursuits, agricultural cooperatives, and certainly the media. The core here is individuals with individuals, such as, for example, Indian students in the United States today, your sons and daughters on the campuses and in the towns of America. I have served at the highest levels in government and spent most of my working life in the private sector. Having followed a truly global career, I can attest to the fact that great national partnerships and alliances thrive when all elements of government, corporate, and civil societies are engaged. And sometimes dare I say it, the private sector runs well ahead of the public sector. If India is to build an Indian century, it will not be simply because India grows at 8 or 10% per annum. It will be because India reaches out, opens up, and engages to become a leader in today's globalized world. A strategic alliance with the United States, functioning in all fields and at all levels, will, in my opinion, be a vital part of this realized vision. And its strongest foundations will be in the hearts and the minds and the creative drive of individuals in both countries. Secretary of State Powell shares this enthusiastic view of the U.S.-India strategic relationship as we enter the 21st century. With President Bush, he has been the key architect and driving force in the ongoing transformation of our relations. That is why he is speaking to you tonight and why he is visiting Delhi next week. He also believes in the power of individuals to shape the events of today and tomorrow. His life, as you must all know, is a living testament to this principle. Secretary Powell has traveled to India many times, and he had the honor to host Foreign Minister Sinha's visit to Washington in January, during which the Foreign Minister had an extensive discussion with President Bush on the very day of the President's State of the Union address. Next week in New Delhi, Foreign Minister Sinha will return the favor, and Secretary Powell will meet Prime Minister Vajpayee and other senior officials. And from what I read in the press, it seems that Tuesday's cricket match could very well pose a greater distraction than the State of the Union. I have had the privilege of knowing Secretary Powell for over 30 years. We were both at different times in an intern program called the White House Fellowship Program, now many years ago. Secretary Powell was in the U.S. Army at that time and subsequently had an extremely distinguished career, culminating in his service as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Secretary Powell is an embodiment of the American dream, rising from humble beginnings as the child of Jamaican immigrants in New York to become one of the most influential and well-respected men in America. Secretary Powell is a strong supporter of diplomacy and believes in the power of strong relations to build global peace and prosperity. Throughout his career, the Secretary has provided unsurpassed leadership and judgment in difficult times. He is a gifted manager and counselor, and his personal integrity is above reproach. What is perhaps less well known is the fact that Secretary Powell has orchestrated over the past few years an overhaul of the U.S. State Department to improve America's ability to meet the increasingly complex challenges of diplomacy in the 21st century. He is a proactive secretary with a hands-on management style that has inspired and energized America's foreign service. He worked with Congress to expand the State Department's budget after years of shrinking appropriations, and he has implemented the Diplomatic Readiness Initiative to restore our employee base. He has also upgraded our information technology systems to levels more characteristic of a private corporation and greatly expanded new embassy construction around the world under cost and on time. In short, Secretary Powell is an outstanding American. He is a leader and diplomat of true vision, And that vision embraces the U.S.-India strategic partnership, both today and looking forward into the coming century. Then, of course, there is the man himself, best described perhaps in the words of historian John Wayland, and I quote, "A true gentleman is the man whose conduct proceeds from goodwill and an acute sense of propriety, who does not make the poor man conscious of his poverty or the obscure man of his obscurity, who speaks with frankness, but always with sincerity and sympathy, and whose deeds follow his words," unquote. It is with great pride that I introduce the United States Secretary of State, Colin Powell, and thank you very much.
Opportunity to address your India Today conclave. You know, well before he took office, President Bush set the goal of improving relations with India, a nation of over 1 billion people, a dynamic, multi-ethnic democracy, the ancestral home of over 1.5 million Americans, a critical presence in Asia, a nation of enormous achievement and promise. When Prime Minister Vajpayee first met President Bush in November of 2001, he embraced the objective of transforming our bilateral relationship, calling the United States and India natural allies. Prime Minister Vajpayee was right. Both our nations draw strength from our traditions and the talents of our diverse citizenries. Both our nations seek to stretch the bounds of human knowledge and seize the opportunities of a 21st century world. And both of us recognize that our cooperation can greatly benefit both of our nations and the international community. Today, the world's oldest democracy, the United States, and the world's biggest democracy, India, are pursuing a shared vision of where our relationship can go, not where it has been. We are working side by side against terrorism, the spread of infectious diseases, environmental degradation and trafficking in drugs and human beings. We are pooling our strengths to stabilize troubled regions. Together, we are building a strategic partnership based on our shared commitment to freedom, prosperity, and security. President Bush and Prime Minister Vajpayee have committed our governments to a variety of steps to deepen and expand that strategic partnership, which I look forward to advancing during my trip to the region next week. We are working to create an environment that increases economic activity between our countries, including high-technology commerce. We also seek to enhance our collaboration on civilian nuclear cooperation and peaceful uses of space technology. We have embarked on a dialogue on strategic stability, and we will further our shared non-proliferation goal of keeping weapons of mass destruction out of the hands of terrorists and out of the hands of rogue states. The United States and India also share an interest in a united, peaceful, democratic Afghanistan and democratic Iraq. And on behalf of President Bush and the American people, I thank the government and people of India for their contributions of funds and know-how to the international reconstruction efforts underway in Afghanistan, and for the similar commitments you have made to assist in the reconstruction of Iraq. In both cases, India is helping long-suffering peoples emerge from decades of tyranny and terror to build a better future. By helping the people of Afghanistan and by helping the people of Iraq, you are also fostering regional as well as global stability. This is a time when statesmanship, vision, and determination can bring about historic change. The far-sighted steps toward the peaceful resolution of disputes being taken by India and Pakistan under the leadership of Prime Minister Vajpayee and President Musharraf have given fresh hope to the citizens of both countries. 2 years ago, I remember all too vividly, India and Pakistan were spiraling toward conflict. Now, instead, both of you are shaping a composite dialogue and expanding bilateral trade and people-to-people ties. The United States desires close relationships with each country in the South Asia region. In the coming months, as India and Pakistan work to resolve their differences, the United States will remain a steadfast friend and supporter of the peacemakers on both sides, and we will continue to build strong bilateral ties with each country in its own right. Indeed, U.S.-India relations are the best that they have been in decades, and we are confident that they will grow even better as we continue to advance a rich agenda of bilateral, regional, and global importance. This audience of corporate leaders knows, however, that even though our bilateral relationship is at its highest point in history, our economic cooperation has not even begun to reach its full potential. U.S.-India joint ventures in the high-tech areas have prospered in recent years, but we must increase our economic ties across the board to the advantage of Indians and Americans alike. The United States market remains much more open to Indian firms and their products than is the Indian market to U.S. trade and investment. The American people, and I must be candid, the American people will find it less difficult to accept outsourcing if India helps generate more American jobs by supporting trade liberalization in the World Trade Organization and by further opening its markets to U.S. exports. The people of India deserve the same opportunity that Americans have in our open market to find the world's best products at the best prices. The business community's insights and ideas can help both of our governments create favorable conditions for an expansion of our economic relationship. You can help us grasp the great opportunities that scientific advance and the worldwide spread of political and market freedoms offer to both our economies. A thriving, peaceful, democratic India is taking its place on the world stage, and the United States looks forward to acting in close partnership with her. In the years ahead, I see the U.S.-Indian relationship becoming as rich and vibrant as a Bollywood blockbuster. To be sure, there will be twists and turns of plot and some challenges for the characters to overcome, but I have no doubt that there will be a happily ever after result for India, for America, and for the world community. Thank you very much.